He opened his eyes to find himself in a world where everyone bonded with battle beasts. Unfortunately, his starting identity was nothing more than a bottom-tier tamer who couldn't even feed his pet properly. The cruel irony? This body once belonged to a legendary man, the strongest in the world. He was adored by thousands of girls, a true heartthrob, and his companion beast was said to be a mythical creature feared across the realm. But by the time he took over, fate had already played a nasty trick. That so-called legendary pet turned out to be a useless bug that could barely crawl. Fortunately, he inherited all of the former master's memories. Hidden deep inside was a long-lost tome, an ancient bestiary known as the Tome of the Moon. The bestiary had a strange mechanic. Simply touching an unregistered beast would activate a new entry. And once enough entries were collected, it would trigger a gacha-style reward, summoning a random beast of unpredictable rarity. He was instantly thrilled. This was the Beast Academy after all, where creatures roamed like ants on sugar. Scanning them would be a breeze. Without hesitation, he set his sights on saving up for a 10-pull draw. Meanwhile, on the other side of the training ground, Bayuer was feeding a few low-tier baby beasts. Su Jing frowned at the sight, insisting that the scent of weaklings would only repel powerful companions. The one she idolized, the Moon's sovereign, never touched ordinary creatures. Not even the exalted supreme-rank beasts were worthy of his attention. But just then, a snow-white bunny perked up its ears as if it sensed something. It hopped its way toward someone's feet and came to a sudden stop. A closer look, and it was unmistakable. That bunny looked exactly like the legendary Moon Sovereign. Its crescent moon eyes radiated a cold, commanding aura. Just one glance was enough to make anyone instinctively bow their head in submission. He stared at the strange creature in front of him, frozen in place. Countless thoughts and wild possibilities rushed through his mind. Still, he chose to keep a low profile, sticking to the persona of the body's original owner. Seeking to grow stronger fast, he made his way to the so-called Moon Pavilion. Rumor had it the place was swarming with low-tier beasts, a playground for beginner tamers. Sure enough, glowing motes of light began drifting across his field of view. Without thinking, he extended a finger toward one of them. A soft chime rang out. The bestiary had recorded a new entry, and the collection count quietly ticked upward. One after another, outlines of low-tier beasts began to shimmer before his eyes like ghostly projections. To Su Liang's astonishment, the Tome of the Moon didn't just identify creatures. It also revealed their battle records and background info. Just then, at the end of a narrow path, an old iron door came into view. Driven by curiosity, he reached out and gently pushed it open. What lay beyond was eerily quiet. Not a single low-tier beast in sight. Clearly, this was the territory of something far more powerful. But in the very next moment, he froze. Bathed in ethereal moonlight, a creature lay calmly on a bed-like platform, its body seemingly one with the glow. Looking closer, he saw the delicate outline of a white deer, with violet horns rising from its head. It was a moon blossom stag, one of the most elegant and rare mid-tier beasts in existence. Even the bystanders, upon seeing the white stag, felt a sudden surge of confidence, like maybe, just maybe, they had a chance too. Who said you had to fall in love to find meaning? A majestic beast like this might be all one needed for inner peace. But before anyone could finish their thoughts, a loud splurt echoed through the air. The moon blossom stag had just spit a gooey stream all over them. Apparently, this mid-tier beast not only understood human speech, but also had a sense of sarcasm. At that moment, it turned its gaze toward a figure standing silently in the distance. With graceful steps, it approached him directly, its moonlit eyes locked onto his, studying him with uncanny clarity. In that instant, a beam of light flashed, and the Tome of the Moon floated into view. New entry recorded, Beast unlocked, Sovereign Moonlight, Chaser of the Clouds. His eyes widened. Wasn't the Moon Blossom Stag just a mid-tier beast? Why was it showing up as a sovereign class entity? Beasts of that level ruled entire regions. their mere aura enough to crush weaker creatures. If enraged, they could flatten entire landscapes in minutes. What on earth was something that dangerous doing inside a school campus? But then it hit him. Maybe it was unusually docile, and the academy trusted it not to cause harm. Otherwise, those two guys earlier wouldn't have walked away with just a splash of spit. At that moment, the stag lowered its head to examine the inscription carved on the nearby stone tablet. It seemed to realize something was off with the description. Its gaze sharpened, muscles tensed. Its stance shifted into an aggressive posture. Had he lingered too long? Had it noticed someone had uncovered its true identity? In a hurry, he blurted out loud, "Wow, what a beautiful little deer. I must have gotten totally mesmerized." He pretended to admire the scenery, inching backward step by step, ready to make his escape. The moment the heavy gate clicked shut behind him, he bolted like a startled hare, sprinting with all his might. Behind him, the moon-blossom stag stood frozen, blinking in silent confusion. Its mind was still replaying the image of those crescent-marked eyes. Who was that human, really? Then, as if struck by a thought, it lowered its head and began rummaging beneath the bedding. Out came a smartphone, awkwardly held between its hooves. With surprising precision, it tapped the screen and began a search. Humans with crescent-shaped eye patterns. Suddenly, its pupils contracted. A jolt of realization hit. It's him. Meanwhile, he finally made it to the dormitory zone of the Beast Academy, panting from the sprint. Seriously, whose bright idea was that? That's like keeping a T-Rex in a petting zoo. And to make matters worse, that harmless-looking white deer? One stomp from her could flatten a herd of T-Rexes without breaking a sweat. If he'd run into that cloud-chasing monster out in the wild, he'd be dead meat. After all, sovereign-class beasts could only be matched by others of the same tier, while his own pet was basically a walking plush toy. Then, something clicked in his mind. Back in the Moon Pavilion, the bestiary had listed Shadowfang Mouse, low-tier moon element, skill, Shadow Strike. Could it actually identify a beast skill set too? If that's true, then he could learn the abilities of every creature he came into contact with. Looks like your every move is now an open book to me. Which means it's time to show off, baby. First, he needed a test subject. Something small and easy to verify. His eyes landed on the same moonlight rabbit he'd spotted earlier during the day. But something felt off. By the world's rules, moon element beasts should grow stronger under moonlight. But oddly enough, the little white rabbit didn't move an inch. Could it be playing dumb while hiding its true power? That serene, unshakable presence. What if it was actually stronger than a sovereign tier beast? The thought made him panic. He quickly backed away, softly humming Fluffy Little Bunny, white and bright to cover his retreat. Unbeknownst to him, someone had caught the scene just as her phone slipped from her hands and hit the ground. The screen still displayed a search, a query about him. The Beastkin girl blinked in disbelief. In her eyes, he was the Moon Sovereign. So why was he touching a low-tier moonlight rabbit like that? Could she have stumbled upon a secret the Moon Sovereign never meant to reveal? Back at her dorm room, she hesitantly turned to her bestie and whispered, "Do you think there's a chance the Moon Sovereign actually likes small animals?" Her friend looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Did a beast kick you in the head or something? But the Beastkin girl remained thoughtful, her gaze distant. Who would have guessed that the untouchable Moon Sovereign had such a soft, gentle side? And if she was the only one who knew this secret, didn't that make it hers alone? The idea made her oddly excited. Meanwhile, the so-called Moon Sovereign himself couldn't care less. So what if the persona cracked a little? Right now, all he wanted was a long, uninterrupted nap. But just as he hit the mattress, his body went stiff. Standing by the window was a woman he had never seen before. Silent, unmoving, and shrouded in mystery. Who was she? She didn't feel human at all. Could she be a humanoid beast companion? The pressure radiating from this woman was even more overwhelming than that of the sovereign tier Moonblossom Stag. As she drew closer, he barely dared to breathe, every nerve in his body stretched taut. Then suddenly, she dropped to one knee with fluid precision. Her voice was low and respectful. "Greetings, Moon Sovereign." "Hail, great moon deity." A flash of memory stirred. According to the original host's recollection, she was one of the 4 personal beast companions of the Twin Moon sect's lunar envoys. But which envoy exactly, he just couldn't recall. The result? A painfully awkward scene. The woman knelt in silence, cold sweat forming as she interpreted his stillness as divine majesty. To break the tension, he finally asked, "Why are you here?" The question seemed to release the pressure. She exhaled subtly in relief. Her expression turned serious. Lately, remnants of the Black Moon cult have been spotted across the continent. They've been making covert contact with beast tamers from the Moon Temple. He frowned slightly. Black Moon cult? Never heard of it. As he calmly turned his back, the woman looked visibly puzzled. He raised a hand to pause her. "Hold on. I think I'm about to remember." He quickly pulled up a search engine and started typing furiously, only to find the cult's wiki page buried deep online. Turns out, it wasn't his memory that failed. This cult was just so irrelevant, the original host never even bothered learning about it. The woman continued. "The cult itself may be weak, but if the Moon Temple is involved, the situation becomes far more serious. Unlike minor factions, the Moon Temple once ruled the world through sheer might, backed by their legendary beast companions. But over time, their dominance has been steadily challenged by the rising power of the Twin Moon sect. Now that all 4 lunar envoys plan to move out together, you'll be left without personal guards. So I came to ask for your permission in advance." He waved dismissively. "Go. As long as I still stand beneath moonlight, there is nothing to fear." She paused, stunned for a moment, as if trying to process his words. Then, her face lit up with uncontainable excitement. She never imagined she'd live to hear that legendary phrase with her own ears. As long as the moonlight butterfly watches over the Moon Sovereign, no force under the heavens may lay a finger on him, for he is the brightest light beneath the moon. And just like that, she vanished into thin air. He finally let out a long breath, saying something that cringeworthy nearly made him want to punch himself on the spot. Apparently, the former host of this body was a full-blown edgelord, constantly spouting cryptic one-liners that his followers treated like sacred scripture. Gems like, "I feel the presence of the moon deity," "The moon is about to rise," "The moon is about to set," or "Tonight's moon, it's so round." All were considered divine revelations. To run into this kind of nonsense on his very first day post-transmigration was a little much. The Moon Temple nowadays wasn't even a real threat anymore. But how long could he keep up the divine facade with just one overly dramatic butterfly? With no guard by his side anymore, what if danger really struck? Would the so-called strongest Moon Sovereign just drop dead like that? Wait, hold on. He suddenly remembered. The bestiary had a summoning feature. After all the beasts he'd interacted with at the Moon Pavilion, he should have saved up enough data for a free draw. Without hesitation, he pulled up the system and selected Redeem. According to the instructions, even if the summoned beast was trash, he could cancel the contract and convert it into experience points. Not a total loss. But if luck was on his side and a sovereign tier pet dropped, then baby, it was game over for his enemies. Hands clasped together, he whispered like a desperate gambler, "Oh, mighty RNG gods, bless this broke non-spender. Sovereign beast, come to Papa." Gritting his teeth, he slammed the summon button. The tome of the moon exploded with a violent gust of wind, its pages flapping like thunder. A brilliant golden light beamed down from the heavens, flooding the entire room. A crisp system chime echoed, ding. New beast unlocked. Bestiary updated. Congratulations. You've summoned high-tier moon element, Prism Shade Wraith. He blinked. Not bad. An advanced support-type pet with 2 battle skills. A pretty solid pull. But for someone who once led the Twin Moon sect, that level of beast was nowhere near good enough. Without hesitation, he canceled the contract. The Prism Shade Wraith dissolved into pure beast energy. The energy surge nearly pushed him into the rank of a 2-star beast tamer. Yet strangely, he felt no joy at all. Back in his prime, even sovereign tier beasts lined up begging to form a pact with him. If not for the moonlight butterfly, he wouldn't have spared most of them a glance. And now, reduced to rolling the dice like a desperate rookie, how far he'd fallen. But then it hit him. Sure, the Prism Shade Wraith wasn't a game changer, but at least it did more than that lazy butterfly who just fluttered in circles. Why on earth did he send it back? It seemed his personality was still subtly influenced by the original host's lingering instincts. Next time he pulled a high-tier beast, he'd sign the contract first, regret later. Tomorrow, he'd hit up the Moon Pavilion again. More beasts, more data. Simple grind logic. And maybe, just maybe if he brought some treats for that Moon Blossom stag, he could bribe it into tagging along. Meanwhile, on the other side of the academy, the Moon Blossom stag returned to find its living space in ruins. A caretaker gently patted its neck, trying to soothe it. Once you're at the Moon Temple, life will be even better. Just behave, all right? The stag's eyes widened in shock. Wait, what? I've been sold? To the Moon Temple. Nearby, a red-haired woman scoffed. So this is where the great Moon Sovereign came to train? Huh, looks more like a kiddie daycare. Her blue-haired companion gave her a chilling glare. Enough, little sister. Don't stir trouble, especially when it involves the Moon Sovereign or the Twin Moon Sect. The redhead rolled her eyes. Yeah, let's just grab the deer and get this over with. Just then, the curator of the Moon Pavilion stepped out, wearing a practiced, courteous smile. But the arrogant attitude of the visitors made her eyes narrow ever so slightly. Internally, she sneered, The age of the Moon Temple lording over everyone is long gone. For them to offer 10 times the price to take a single Moon Blossom stag, there was clearly more to this. At first, she blinked in surprise. Then her eyes gleamed with sudden insight. Might as well milk this for all it's worth. She cleared her throat and spoke calmly. That stag isn't just any beast. It's a direct descendant of the Academy's first founder's own companion. We've raised it with sovereign-level care for years. Your tenfold offer doesn't even scratch the surface of the investment we've made. The red-haired woman chuckled mockingly. Founder's bloodline? It's a mid-tier beast at best. A shabby place like this probably hasn't even seen a real divine-class creature. Before she could finish, the blue-haired woman cut in sharply. Enough. We'll pay 20 times. The curator's eyes practically sparkled with gold at the offer, barely suppressing the urge to burst into tears of joy. The red-haired woman, however, gasped in disbelief. Sis, are you serious? 20 times? That's way beyond our budget. What she didn't know was that her sister's contracted beast had a rare ability, one that could sense impending danger. And ever since arriving, it had been acting increasingly agitated, as if something terrible was about to happen. The blue-haired woman clenched her thoughts. This isn't Moon Temple territory. We need to buy the stag and get out fast. But just as she was about to close the deal and retreat, her body froze. An overwhelming pressure descended like a tidal wave, crushing the very air around them. She slowly turned her head, trembling as she whispered, He's here. The Moon's Sovereign has arrived. She never imagined he'd show up in a place like this. What now? Was this deal still even possible? Her red-haired sister stood beside her, already paralyzed by the sheer weight of his presence, her mind utterly blank. The blue-haired woman cried out in panic, Little sister, look down, don't meet his eyes. Snap out of it. But it was too late. Her sister suddenly froze, and then collapsed into her arms, stammering, I looked into the Moon's Sovereign's eyes. Before either of them could react, a shadowy figure stepped into view. With nothing more than a single glance, he forced these once proud women to lower their heads, unable to resist, compelled to submit. In their eyes, he carried a cold, commanding presence, one that saw all things as insignificant dust. A pressure so intense, even the gods themselves might flinch before it. Yet in truth, he was merely curious why members of the Moon Temple had shown up here. And under that unrelenting gaze, the sister's courage was reduced to splinters. But seriously, could someone rescue him already? Standing still this long was pure torture. Just then, The curator of the Moon Pavilion rushed over in a flurry. With an exaggerated bow and sparkly eyes, she gushed, "Oh, honorable Moon's sovereign, what a blessing it is to witness your radiance in person." Raising her arm proudly, she added, "I joined the Twin Moon sect just 3 months ago. These two are envoys from the Moon Temple, here to purchase that moon blossom stag you saw yesterday. Its beauty was so exceptional, even the Moon Temple couldn't resist offering a fortune." What none of them seemed to realize was the beast's true identity. Only he knew what it really was. That wasn't some overpriced collector's pet. It was a sovereign-class creature, and there was no way he'd let it be taken. He turned around slowly, voice cold and firm. "Leave. This is not a place for you." "The moon is about to set," the curator whispered behind him. "It's literally noon, though. What moon?" But in the very next moment, the curator's smile froze on her face. The two sisters stared in disbelief. Did he just say, "The moon is about to set"? Had it been anyone else, they might have dismissed it as poetic nonsense. But coming from the one known as the strongest moon sovereign, that phrase could very well be a grim omen, a silent warning of something catastrophic for the Moon Temple. The red-haired woman tried to speak, to offer some kind of retort, but her voice faltered. Before she could get a word out, a crushing wave of pressure fell upon her. She felt it instantly. The Moon Sovereign was staring straight at her. His eyes, cold and unrelenting, pierced right through her. In that moment, her entire body trembled as if submerged in ice. Only when he slowly turned his gaze away did she collapse to her knees with a dull thud, fainting directly into her sister's arms. By now, the sisters didn't even dare mention the white deer again. Deep down, they knew this was far beyond anything they could handle. They needed to return to the Moon Temple immediately and report everything to the 10 Pillar Priestesses. A storm was coming, and it had already begun to stir. As the two stumbled away, the curator let out a faint smile. "Your dim little moons, weren't they meant to fade long ago? The true moon has always slumbered quietly in the sovereign's gaze." Meanwhile, the Moon Sovereign finally exhaled in relief. Thank the stars that redhead stuttered. He had no clue what he'd say next. He wasn't sure if his bluff had truly worked, but at least for now, the Moon Temple would think twice before trying to claim that deer again. Elsewhere, the white deer still hadn't come to terms with the fact it had been sold. Its bewildered expression stirred something soft in the caretaker's heart. While tidying up, the caretaker gently whispered, "Sweetheart, I know it's hard to leave, but even at the Moon Temple, Mommy will come visit you often." Just as she reached to straighten the blankets, her hands suddenly froze. Tucked inside the sheets were a bunch of girly items, snacks, romance novels, a mirror, and even a pink phone. "Since when do spirit beasts like this kind of stuff?" she muttered in confusion. Picking up the phone, she frowned. "Whose phone is this? Did someone drop it here?" Meanwhile, the white deer was already breaking into a cold sweat. If she opened that browser history, its secret life would be exposed. With trembling eyes and a fierce glint, it made a silent vow. "For the sake of my anime search history, I will become a demon if I must." A sharp yelp rang out as the phone shot into the air like a bullet. It spun midair, then landed perfectly in someone's outstretched hand. The white deer stared in shock. It was him. The one who caught the phone was none other than the Moon King, and of all people, he had to be the one who caught it. Holding the phone, the Moon King raised a curious brow, then suddenly let out a soft chuckle. The others were still clueless, but the deer had already buried its head deep under the covers. On the screen was a rather steamy scene from a brother-obsessed CEO romance novel. He smirked and muttered, "Should I say it too? Woman, you've piqued my interest." Who would have thought? This shy little deer had a secret obsession with spicy bedtime novels. To keep her close, he personally shut down the deal with the Moon God Palace. Then, under the name of the Twin Moon sect, he bought out the entire Moonlight Pavilion. With this cover, he could now gather Moonlight-type beasts without raising suspicion. News of this move sent shockwaves. Was this a declaration of war against the Moon God Palace? But what really stirred curiosity was the phone. What exactly did the Moon King see that made him react like that? Suddenly, a flash of white streaked past. The white deer lunged forward, snatching the phone in one swift bite. Without a moment's pause, she bolted for the exit. Her mind was still reeling. He had seen through her disguise and peeked into her shameful browsing history. There was only one thought in her head. If he walks out of here, she'll never be able to show her face again. Just then, a voice called out from behind him. The white deer blocked his path, flustered. You saw everything, didn't you? Hearing the girlish tone, it finally made sense. Of course she'd be into that kind of novel. She stomped her hoof angrily. If you dare breathe a word of this to anyone, I swear you won't live to regret it. His silence made her think she'd successfully scared him off. But instead, he smirked. Sometimes, a social death is just another name for a fresh start. Then, with mock solemnity, he added, Woman, you've officially piqued my interest. That line nearly made the white deer faint from shame. Why you don't think I'm scared just because you're the Moon King? Say one word about this to anyone, and I'll ram into you full speed. Make sure you bleed for it. Instead of backing down, he suddenly remembered something. Supreme Tier Beast had a sixth sense. With just a whisper of his will, she'd come running instantly. He lifted his chin with a sly grin. If I call you and you don't show up, I might just let your little secret slip out. With that, he turned around like some dramatic movie lead, cloak fluttering behind him. But the white deer suddenly called out, her voice serious, Beware of the full moon. He didn't stop walking, didn't even flinch, as if her warning was nothing but background noise. She blinked, dazed. Was that a confession? It felt like something straight out of a cheesy romance novel. Had she just been seduced? Outside the Moonlight Hall, he finally exhaled. He just pulled a fast one on a supreme class beast. It was just a playful jab, or so he thought. But somehow, those words came out sounding way too serious. Then again, binding with a beast meant staying together till death. Sounded a lot like marriage vows. And the look on her face when she panicked? Adorably priceless. But what did she mean by beware the full moon? Could something disastrous be waiting on the night of the full moon? Just 3 days away? Meanwhile, deep within the Moon God Palace, the 10 moon priestesses were gathered in secret council. Said to be the most powerful and breathtaking women in the entire realm, these 10 ruled from the very top. You're certain? The Moon King actually said, the moon will fall. After confirming the sisters weren't lying, the fourth priestess's expression darkened. This isn't good at all. The Moon King would never lower himself to interact with a mere low-tier beast. His appearance at the Moonlight Hall is far too suspicious, which could only mean one thing. Something within that place had drawn his attention. Possibly a creature with imperial blood. And if he truly managed to bond with such a beast, then the divine entity sealed within him may be awakening. A legendary awakening. And once that happens, Moon God Palace will fall. Meanwhile, somewhere far away, a shadowy figure curled his lips into a wicked grin. In this world, the moon doesn't just shine for the so-called Moon King. After taking over the Moonlight Hall, Su Liang immediately ordered the Twin Moon sect to scour the land for moon-type beasts to help him complete the Moon Tome's bestiary. The move sent shockwaves across the Northern Territory, plunging it into a state of panic. Some believe the Moon King was harvesting beasts to fuel his divine power. Others whispered that the ancient deity sealed within him was on the verge of awakening. But right at the eye of this storm, Su Liang was casually spinning the Moon Tome's summoning wheel. The results? Utter disappointment. 2 low-tier and 2 mid-tier beasts. Only one at the end looked even remotely promising. A high-tier beast with a mysterious aura. Without hesitation, Su Liang converted the weaker ones into upgrade points. But that final one, named Moon in the Lake, was a name even he had never heard before. Su Liang first tried searching the beast encyclopedia, but to his surprise, nothing came up at all. Seriously, he muttered. A creature so obscure, even the Great Beast Compendium doesn't recognize it. Without hesitation, he opened the Moon Tome. Soon enough, the entry for Moon in the Lake appeared before his eyes. What he read stunned him. a high-tier variant beast that had gone extinct over 13,000 years ago. Its signature ability? Absorbing all forms of damage. If overloaded, it would self-destruct, but as long as the Beastmaster survived, the creature would revive after a short time. A beast older than the Moon Palace itself. No wonder no one had heard of it. That discovery sparked an idea in Su Yang's mind. After all, taming such an ancient and powerful beast could easily expose his identity, something the world's strongest Beastmaster couldn't afford. But since no one knew the true identity of Moon in the Lake, and its unassuming form made it hard to recognize, Su Yang made up his mind. He would form a contract with her. The moment he did, a serene moonlit lake appeared inside his beast realm, its aura so cold and ancient that even his flash-winged butterfly trembled in fear. Meanwhile, as the full moon approached, a Black Moon cult agent hidden inside the Beastmaster Academy finally made his move. His mission was simple: monitor Su Yang. And right now, he was positioned dangerously close to the Moon King himself. The agent silently prayed he wouldn't be noticed. If Su Yang even sensed a hint of hostility, he'd be dead before he could blink. Back on Su Yang's side, his flash-winged butterfly was visibly agitated, fluttering erratically. He ruled out the moon in the lake as the cause. She was still in deep slumber. That left only one possibility. A deadly presence had infiltrated the academy, triggering panic among the lower-tier beasts. Stepping out of the dorm, Su Yang was greeted by chaos. Low-tier beasts were scattering in every direction. Just as he suspected, someone had infiltrated the academy, and the target was likely him. Suddenly, a deafening explosion rocked the air as a nearby building collapsed into rubble. From within the debris, the Black Moon cult agent stared upward in terror. A massive beast loomed in the smoke, its outline hazy, but its aura overwhelming. What shocked him most was that it resembled a mutated version of the harmless Moonlight Rabbit.